I spend a lot of time playing games, probably more so than listening to music, and definitely more so than watching movies or anime, so I feel pretty prepared for this category. I played something like 37 games this year, to completion, and some of those even 100%. So let's run down some of my favorites. My choice for best old game was a pretty easy one to make. It's actually a game I've had in my top 3 list in the past. I don't normally go back to games, but this one had a pretty significant update that had me engrossed in its universe once again. Best old game, No Man's Sky. I played over 80 hours of No Man's Sky when it was released. Despite its flaws, I still had a good time flying through the Euclid Galaxy. Enough of a good time that I can see myself booting the game back up every now and again in the future just to get a quick space exploration session in. What I didn't expect was to spend another near 80 additional hours with it over the course of 3 weeks. The No Man's Sky Next update breathed new life into that game. I hadn't played it much since launch. I checked in on it after the first few major updates, but no more than one play session. So not only did I get to experience all the new things in Next, but I also got to go through the reworked single player progression introduced in Atlas Rises. The core of No Man's Sky is still the same. If that didn't work for you, Next isn't going to fix that. What it does do is make that core more enjoyable by giving you more things to do. The new single player progression is simple but compelling enough to see through to the end. The multiplayer is another excuse I have to just hang out and chat with my friends. And the base building can be its own complete rabbit hole if you fall into it. But the main draw of No Man's Sky for me is how serene it is to jump from planet to planet. It's a relaxation game. Next helped make those moments of relaxation feel more like an actual journey. I had goals now. Gear I wanted to upgrade, ships I wanted to buy, planets I wanted to make home. If you bounced off No Man's Sky a few years ago, I think it's worth giving it a second shot. Even though I spent a not insignificant amount of time with No Man's Sky, I still found time to play a ton of new games, and I'm going to highlight 3 of them. This first of which I expect won't be on many people's lists. Number 3, Moonlighter. Earlier in the year, I went a little crazy trying to figure out the name of a game. All I could remember from the trailer was that it had a pixel art style and the main character jumped into a Nintendo Switch that was created by 2 stone statues that looked like Joy-Con. That game was Moonlighter, and I'm glad I tracked it down because it turns out it had a real neat hook. Moonlighter is a little dungeon crawler. You make runs in the dungeons killing enemies and gathering loot with the goal of reaching the boss at the end. But once you're done with your run, you take your loot back to your shop the next morning and sell it. That aspect of the game is what made it so engaging. I loved trying to find the right price to sell my items, hunting for specific items for clients, and even slowly upgrading my shop. While in the dungeons, you have to make decisions on what to take back with you because you only have so much space in your backpack. Yeah, there's inventory management here, but it isn't a chore like you'd expect. It's actually enjoyable thanks to the special effects some items have that affect their placement. The micromanaging in this game is the draw, and it works because it isn't overly convoluted or complex. And it's the perfect game for the Switch too. Each run only takes a handful of minutes, even faster when you've upgraded your gear. It's very easy to just pick up and play for a short while when you have some downtime. It's surprising how I had such a better time with Moonlighter than I did with a lot of other bigger games this year. I think it's really neat and I hope it gets some love from other people as well. Now, this next game is already getting a lot of love from people too, and rightfully so.
Show me what you were made of, 'cause I'm always with you. Come on.
Number 2, Tetris Effect. It's fucking Tetris! What do I really need to say about Tetris? It's the quintessential desert island game. I can play Tetris forever, just at its base level. Add on the fantastic visuals and beautiful soundtrack of Tetris Effect, and you got yourself what might be my go-to Tetris game for the foreseeable future. Think about that for a second. A game that improves on Tetris without actually changing Tetris. Tetris Effect's greatest achievement, at least personally, might be how it has gotten me to play different modes more often, and in turn, helped me get better at Tetris. I mostly stick to Marathon. It's what I enjoy, and it's a good way to scratch the itch when it rears its head. But Tetris Effect coerced me into playing its other effect modes thanks to its soundtrack. One of my favorite tracks in the entire game is the music in the Ultra mode, so I keep playing that mode just to keep hearing the song. I think the only issue I have with Tetris Effect is that there's no competitive multiplayer mode. I get that it goes against the chill vibe of the game, but it's one of my favorite ways to play Tetris. I can already imagine how cool a music track could be that's built collaboratively between two competing players. Of course, I still have Puyo Tetris to play head to head, and that's still great Tetris, but I want the flair of Tetris Effect. But that really is just a minor nitpick, because just talking about Tetris Effect makes me want to go play some right now. This game is absolutely Game of the Year material. But there is just one game that narrowly beats it out. Number 1, Marvel's Spider-Man. I reviewed Spider-Man on the site. You can go watch that video if you haven't already. It's a pretty glowing review, I'll admit. I ended up giving it 4 stars. Now, I don't second guess my reviews by the time they're published. I stand by them and the scores. Spider-Man's no different. But every once in a while, even now, I think, maybe that read like a 5-star review actually. Now, I'm not changing no score or anything like that. I'm only telling this story to show you guys how much Spider-Man has stuck with me after playing it. Spider-Man is an open world game that, on paper, is full of things that we've kind of moved on from. A ton of collectibles, map revealing towers, and repeated mission types. And yet, Insomniac managed to make a game so full of personality, a virtual New York so pleasant to traverse, and a story with an unexpected amount of emotional weight that those tried and true open world mechanics don't feel as laborious as they do in other games. Even ones that came out this year and tried to move away from those mechanics. Greater than the sum of its parts is an appropriate cliche to use for Spider-Man. Everything comes together to create a real, solid, enjoyable experience. So much so that I wanted more and bought the DLC. I don't do that with games. I play them, enjoy them for what they are, and move on to the next thing. But I keep wanting to come back to Spider-Man, because swinging around my favorite city as my favorite superhero is just a feeling I'm not ready to give up yet. Spider-Man caught me in its web, and I'm naming it my Game of the Year. And those are my favorite games of 2018. This year didn't seem as stacked as 2017 in terms of big games that everyone could rally behind, but it did feel like there was a multitude of fantastic games for all kinds of people. It felt varied in a way I don't normally see. I don't know what other people's lists are going to look like, but I bet they'll be pretty diverse, and I think that is just great. So let me know what your favorite games of the year were, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for another Best of feature. Do you feel like Spider-Man? Because I feel like fucking Spider-Man. I also feel like fucking Spider-Man. No, we're not gonna go there.